Hi, my name is Don Keelan and welcome to The Truth of the Matter. Today I'm honored and privileged to have as my guest Colonel Al Faxon of the United States Marine Corps, retired. Welcome, Al.
Thanks, Don.
It's great to have Al here, and it's not only is a privilege and an honor, but I really also have an expert on Veterans Affairs, and that's what we're going to be speaking about here for the next 20 or 30 minutes, the state of Veterans Affairs here in Vermont. Al brings us quite a background, both as a former 30-year veteran of the military, also having several children in the service, and also a chief officer at the Vermont Veterans Home in Bennington. But let me have Al describe a little bit of his background. And Al, would you do that for us?
Well, went to college at Southern Vermont College, and
local.
Yeah, went local. You know, played baseball, and they had a ski team back then. And while I was in Southern Vermont College, talked to the OSO recruiter, officer selection officer, and when upon graduation, went into the United States Marine Corps. Never expected it to be a 30-year jaunt, but it ended up being 30 years. It's a combination of active and reserve time, split almost just about down the middle. Started off as an infantry officer, did that, and then became a logistics officer with dual, we call it MOSs, and then went to Afghanistan, and in Afghanistan I was the combat engineer, so did a lot of different things in the Marine Corps.
How long were you in Afghanistan?
It was 15, 16 months. It was a long time.
And what years would that have?
I went in 2009 to 2010, the very beginning of President Obama's surge into Afghanistan, down in the Helmand province, which is the desert region down south. And
what exactly did you do there, and were you with other Vermonters when you were there?
Well, what we did down there is the Marine Corps was given the desert region, the southern portion. So Task Force Leatherneck, which is a Marine Expeditionary Brigade, went into that area. First time I'd ever been anywhere that was an open landscape, a flat open desert. From there we had to build bases and combat outposts, to push south towards the border to eliminate the Taliban.
Now, when you went over there, you didn't mention this, but I believe at one point in time you were a professor here at the local high school.
Yeah, at Burton.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. Taught mathematics, a business class, and also coached football and ski team there.
And then while you were a teacher at BBA,
yep.
Were you called up and had to go back into the...
I was.
Get back into uniform.
Yep, I was. I had, later in my career, I went into the reserves to be with my family more, which didn't pan out so well anyway. But after 9/11, that's when I was mobilized again, and from 9/11 I was gone for 7 years. So in that stint, I was on and off being in Vermont.
So you were gone 7 years. You were full active duty.
Yes. From that after 9/11.
After 9/11.
Yeah.
And also, I mentioned that you also have a family involved in the military. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. My oldest son, Alan Faxon, Marine Sergeant Machine Gunner, who did 6 years in the Marine Corps. He's got 2 combat tours under his belt. He's got in Iraq, up near that Mount Sinjar, where ISIS is operating, unfortunately, and also in Yemen. He was the last Marine unit in Yemen at the embassy prior to the last one that was pulled out.
Is he home now? Or?
He is home now, and he's living in Boston, working in construction as a safety manager, which is what his degree is in.
And you also have another son still
yep.
in the armed forces?
Yep, Ethan Faxon is an MP. He's out at Fort Drum. Ethan was wounded in Afghanistan and flown home, so
so he holds the Purple Heart?
He holds the Purple Heart, yep.
Mm-hmm. Must be very proud of him and Alan.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your role at the Veterans Home.
Well, what I'm at the Veterans Home is the Deputy/Chief Operations Officer. I'm not the medical person. Melissa Jackson, who is the CEO, she's the one responsible for all the various different regulations, and she's one of the sharpest individuals I've ever met. But I perform your typical Deputy Chief Operations Officer role, making sure the ship continues to run, work a lot with the marketing of the home, a lot of the outreach, those types of things.
I'm going to cover more about exactly what the Veterans Home does and how long it's been here and
Yep.
how it serves Vermont. But before I do that, your background as a military officer, your background as the chief operating officer of the Veterans Home, from that perspective, can you give us an overview of the state of affairs of how veterans are dealt with in Vermont and how Vermont takes care of its veterans?
Well,
And how do we rank nationally? Or is there such a ranking?
Well, we don't rank so well. If you look at the various different reports on how the economic aspect of supporting veterans, Vermont ranks somewhere around 47th, unfortunately.
47th out of 50?
Yeah. And again, there's various different studies you could take a look at. I think a lot of it is, what's interesting about Vermont is the fact that we don't have any active duty bases or stations, other than we do have a Coast Guard station, that's up on Lake Champlain. I think a lot of Vermonters they don't have the military around them. So they don't see that aspect in their daily lives, so they don't always understand it. Although Vermonters have really done a tough job in both Iraq and Afghanistan since 9/11. Vermonters weren't deployed to the easy areas. They weren't securing bases. They were out on patrols, doing the job, hunting down the enemy. So our Vermont National Guard and those that had enlisted out of high school and gone to college and gone to the military, they have really done a super job around the world.
Now we do have I wouldn't call it an Air Force base, but it's an Air National Guard
Yep.
facility in Burlington, or
In Burlington, yeah.
Okay. That's not considered from your perspective, a military base.
Well, it's a reserve base,
A reserve base, okay.
and there are guys on active duty there. That's for sure. But it's just, we don't see the military in our lives. Like if you go into a lot of other states, you frequently see, the U.S. military, training, loading up, going out, those types of things. We don't see it.
One of the things I've read is that Vermont has paid a dear price in the amount of casualties per capita in all of our wars.
Yep.
And also a large percentage of our young people do go into the military.
Yep.
Why then isn't the state then, on the other side of that, more active in the support of veterans, would you say?
I think it goes back to what I was saying. I mean, Vermont's rural population, the length of the state, people aren't as in tune with what the military does for them. It's a tough thing to get across. You figure that about 8% of our Vermont population are veterans, currently veterans. The number goes from 8 to 10%. And veterans are quiet. Veterans go do their job, they'll go fight wars, they'll come back, and nobody will know anything about what they did. So we're not the best at pleading for our veterans' causes.
I read recently that there are about 47,000 veterans in Vermont, which
Yep.
ties in with what you're saying,
Yep.
of which about 2,000 are World War II veterans. And
Yep.
of course, we're losing them nationally at the rate of 500 a day,
Yep.
with 855,000, I believe, nationally out of the 16 million.
Yeah.
At that rate, you can just do the math. It's in less than 5 years, at the 75th anniversary of at the end of World War II, we won't have any World War II veterans. Do you, at your role at the Veterans Home, do you have World War II veterans there?
Oh, we sure do.
Can you tell us a little about that and what they're like? I mean, I would think that their stories have to be fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean,
Their stories run the gamut, from being in Patton's Third Army to being tail gunners in B-17 bombers over Europe to, the other veteran that was on Tarawa, working on P-38s. I mean, if it's in the history book, our veterans have participated in the event. And it's pretty interesting because a lot of them in their lives don't talk about it at home. But in the Veterans Home, they'll sit down with their peers and they'll share their stories, which is very neat.
You would think the Vermont, if I was a history teacher in Vermont, teaching U.S. history and that period from 1939 to 1945.
Yep.
You would think you would bring a class down there and just let the students listen. Does that happen, or is that? Would you suggest something like that?
The only group that does what you're saying is Southern Vermont College comes. Tom Redden is one of the professors there, and every year he brings his class down there. And they meet the veterans, and they have a program where they sit down with them and they stay with them for several weeks. And then at the end, the college students tell, what it was like to learn the life of these veterans.
Given the fact that, how many do you have down there, did you say?
I think it's 18 right now.
18.
We have some that, the reason number fluctuates is because some also check in. Mm-hmm. Some of them are so spry, they're just coming in for rehab,
okay.
And then they're out.
Given the fact that we are losing our World War II veterans at the rate that nationally and probably statewide, do you think that the Veterans Home would encourage the high schools to bring their students down here to meet these veterans, and would that be both beneficial to the students as well as to the veterans?
Oh, absolutely.
How do the veterans feel about sharing?
Oh, they love. They'll temper what they say to students, but they love meeting the students and telling them generally what they did. Was it last year? Mount Anthony Union High School had an event that when they opened their baseball season, it was a veterans game. So we brought our veterans over there, and they set up a tent, and we threw out the first pitch, and it was tremendous. But what was neat about it is their business class worked on the marketing of the event and tied it in with the veterans. So we're open to anything like that with the local schools.
How is something like that publicized? I didn't. Maybe I did see it, but I.
Well, they did it. The school did do it.
Mm-hmm.
We asked if they wanted assistance, but it was part of their curriculum was to set up the marketing, and they did something for the paper, and it was really neat. And the game had probably greater number of fans than they usually have. It was good.
Tell us a little bit more about the services that are available at the Vermont Veterans Home, and as I understand it, the services are available not just only to veterans, but and veterans who have served in the military. You don't have to be in a combat role, or you don't have to have been injured or wounded. And at the same time, it's also available, if I recall, to the spouses of veterans.
It is.
And to Gold Star mothers. Now, that's the way it had been. Is that the way it still is?
It still is. We're one of the.
And why don't you let us know a little bit more about the home and the services that are there?
Yeah. Well, we're one of the few homes in the country that veterans, honorably discharged veterans, doesn't have to be wartime, peacetime. There really is. If you're in the military, there's no such thing as peacetime. You're involved in humanitarian, you're involved in security. Peacetime's kind of a misnomer anyway. But any veteran honorably discharged can, as long as they qualify medically to stay at the Veterans Home, because really it's for nursing home care and rehab services. So we have 130 beds on the nursing home side, and we have 8 beds that we call domiciliary. That's a VA term, and it's like assisted living, assisted living light almost. So we have a total of 138 beds in the home, veterans, their spouses, and Gold Star parents.
And how many? What's your census there? Let's say as of last
Today,
month. Or
no. Well, as of this morning, we have 121 in the nursing home side, and the dom is full at 8. So we're down 9, to our max capacity, and that's, we want to be consistently in the 125 to 130 range.
Mm-hmm. You're almost there. You are there, really.
We're pretty close. The hardest thing about the whole deal is getting the word out.
Okay, now tell me about that. How does you're down here in southern Vermont?
Yep.
And there's about 100 miles or 110 miles to the border up north, and that's where most of the people live.
And that's where the population density is, and that's the hardest thing, because we really don't have a marketing budget. So
why is that? I mean,
well, it's just.
And by the way, I should let our audience know that the Vermont Veterans Home is a state agency. Is that correct?
It is.
So
yes.
you're in effect a state employee.
I am a state employee. All of our employees are state employees.
Okay, this has nothing to do with the Veterans Administration or the VA. This is not a VA facility?
Which is one of the greatest misconceptions, is anywhere I go, one of the first things out of my mouth, even with, well, one of the first things out of my mouth is, where is your Vermont Veterans Home? And inevitably, many say, well, it's White River Junction. And I go, no. That's why I asked the question. That's our VA medical center, and it's a great place. But we are, the state of Vermont's, the Vermont Veterans Home.
So a Vermont veteran, if they are in need of medical assistance, can go to the VA Medical Center in White River, which I understand is also affiliated with Dartmouth.
Or any of the CBOCs, which are the community-based outreach centers. All of those, I think there's 6 of them in Vermont, they all tie into White River Junction, which is headed by Deb Amdur, who is unbelievable. I mean...
And you have one of them in Bennington, right?
We do.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's a great... We call them CBOCs. We just say
why do you call it CBOCs?
Community-based Outreach Center. So CBOC for short. And they do a great job for veterans.
What do they offer?
Well,
if a veteran doesn't need to be in the veteran's home,
right?
But is that home? But they need medical assistance, but they don't need the White River facility. They can go to
they go to the CBOC.
And what is offered there?
Well, one of the first things that all veterans should do that they don't is they should fill out a thing called a 1010-SH. It's a form. Every veteran should fill this out. And a lot
as soon as they come off duty, right?
Yep. And they don't. They transition out of the military and they take their TAP classes, which are transition assistance classes, but they don't do it, and they go home. The first thing all veterans should do is go to like an American Legion or VFW, and they will get you in contact with someone that's called a Veteran Service Officer. The Veteran Service Officer will help you fill out the form. You can get the form online too, but they'll help you fill it out. That's your first venue or your first avenue of getting into the VA system. Even if you don't need anything, all veterans should do that.
And I've done that.
Because then you're in the system. And then from there, one, you go to the CBOC if you need care. The other, if you have any service-connected challenges, disabilities, illnesses, anything like that, they will help get you evaluated so that you know how to get it taken care of.
And that facility, I might mention to our audience, is several blocks away from the Veterans Home.
The Veterans Home.
On North Avenue in Bennington.
Tremendous facility.
Could you also share with us, because you've gotten many accolades about it, the service you do at the Veterans Home for our veterans or their spouses who suffer from Alzheimer's disease or dementia?
Yep. We have a special wing in the Veterans Home that is dedicated to to those folks with memory challenges. And one, it's beautiful. It's got tremendous artwork. It's got these wide open courtyards with walk areas and plantings and flowers and tomatoes, so things that people always did, they can continue to do. It's a nice open area, and our folks over there, they continue to their education on how to work with dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. So everybody that needs that care that comes and visits it for the first time is amazed.
We were mentioning earlier there are about 47,000 Vermonters who are veterans. Needless to say, many of the veterans live upstate.
Yes.
And you don't have a marketing budget, and yet you're the only veterans home that we have here in Vermont.
Yep.
How do you go about getting the word out of what's available here in Vermont for our veterans? Because we don't have a federal facility either.
No. What we do is, like I said, we call it the Shoe Leather Express, where Melissa and I, the CEO, we get out as often as we can to talk to different groups about the Veterans Home. We'll put on a presentation. We have a PowerPoint slideshow that gives them a good visual of what the Veterans Home is. Our marketing director, Gary L., just got back from his northern swing. He does quarterly. We engage our board of trustees, all of those that are members, to get out there and assist us, get our trifolds out there. We work on we're working on a TV spot to get out there, but it is tough because that is where the population density is.
And your board is a statewide board, appointed by the governor. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it's almost as if, and I've done a little work with the Veterans Home and their board. It's an unusual animal, if I can state that, as an organization. You're not a nonprofit organization, and
right.
you're at the same time you're a quasi-state agency to some degree. I mean, you're funded by the state. What I'm saying, you're funded by Medicare, Medicaid, and also the state of Vermont. The legislature provides several millions of dollars to balance the budget.
Well, out of the easiest way to look at that is out of our annual budget, 75% of it, approximately, we gain from revenues, like you said, Medicaid, Medicare, VA, private pay. Pays for 75% of our budget. The 20 to 25% is what we go back to the state for every year. Do
you have volunteers?
We have some. Now, we have some very dedicated volunteers, but we definitely need more. We're on the search for people that want to volunteer routinely. Like, we have veterans that like to go shopping during the week. We hook up the transportation, but somebody has to go with them. When we have events on the campus, we just need help pushing the veterans out to participate in the picnics and fishing derbies. So we have opportunities.
If someone wants to volunteer at the Vermont Veterans Home, how do they go about doing it?
Well,
I mean, can you provide us? I'm sure we'll have the studio here put phone numbers or emails. Is that the way you?
Yeah, our activities director is Michelle Burgess, and we'll make sure that her phone number.
Can you give us her phone number now?
I can, if you don't mind me putting my glasses on.
No, go right ahead.
40 years old, man, the eyes went. Let me make sure. Yeah, Michelle Burgess's phone number, it's 802 number, and it's 447-6520. And she's the one that she does activities. She runs around 100 miles an hour every day, but she also coordinates the volunteer program because she knows what the activities are and knows what's needed. I mean, we go to the Dorset Playhouse. Those folks, donate tickets to us every year. We'd love, and we just need somebody to go with them and help shepherd them.
Now, also located on the Vermont Veterans Home campus is the Vermont Veterans Family and Outreach Center, Veterans and Family Outreach Center, headed up by John Miner.
Yep.
And that's a very unique organization, and they do a lot of assistance to veterans.
They're a great group of individuals. In fact, every Thursday they have one of those veteran service officers there to help fill out paperwork. So if there's any veterans out there that need assistance and you're in the Bennington area, get there on a Thursday morning. It's usually between 9 and noon. And they will help fill out the paperwork and answer any questions. So even a veteran that did his 3 years, thinks it was relatively uneventful, don't take it that way. Come on in, fill out, get that 1010 SH filled out, and they can answer some questions because there are different benefits out there.
I've spent some time with John, and they also help homeless veterans.
Absolutely.
And many of them are placed in homes in Bennington, and some of them on their own volition like to live up in the mountains during the summer.
Yep.
And the John Miner's group provides sleeping bags and outdoor equipment.
They do.
Has the Veterans Home ever considered providing assistance within the home for that, or is that impractical?
Yeah, it doesn't work with the way we get our funding, basically. The VA is looking at ways that they could work the homeless problem, but the way our home is designed right now, you couldn't fill up those 9 beds, say.
The last I heard, there were about 360
Yep.
homeless veterans in Vermont, of which about maybe anywhere from 10 to 20 are down here in our area.
Yeah.
And some of them they just elect to want to be up in the mountains. In full disclosure, I should say, Al and I serve on the committee of the Vermont Wounded Warriors, which is an event. We sponsor a golf tournament in September and a banquet, and Al recruits the warriors to serve at this event. When I say serve, what happens, they come in and they will be the 4th member of each golf team. And this is our 4th year, and the Veterans Home and the John Miner's outfit and a few other organizations in the Bennington region are beneficiaries of the results. How has that helped the Veterans Home? And when I say the Veterans Home, it doesn't, the funds given by that tournament do not benefit the operations of the home, but the veterans themselves. Is that right?
Absolutely. The money that has been donated from the Wounded Warrior Golf Tournament goes directly to what we call our Members Assistance Fund. And the Members Assistance, not all of the veterans that come in have money, a means to purchase things. We use the Members Assistance Fund for those neediest veterans. The socks, toothbrush, haircuts, they need a TV in their room, things like that. Those veterans that just don't have it.
And those the cost for those things generally will not come from the state, but can come from this fund or that you maintain. Do you, other than not just Wounded Warriors, the Wounded Warrior Golf Tournament, but are there other? If people want to send a donation to the Veterans Home for this fund, is there a way in which they can do that as well?
For that, they could just send it right to the address that you see on the website, and put donation for Members Assistance Fund, and it goes right into that. And there's no road tax on it, as they say. I mean, it goes into the fund, and it's only for needy veterans.
And does the Veterans Home or John Miner's outfit, the Veterans Outreach Center, or the VA, do they help veterans coming into town with if they want to go to college or? What's available? And I guess you were mentioning that this is at John Miner's to fill out that 10 form.
1010 SH, and those guys will really help you see what you're qualified for as far as benefits. The other thing is it's a website by the VA. It's called eBenefits. I think it's ebenefits.gov, but if you just type in VA eBenefits, it'll pull you up. All veterans also that are computer savvy should set up an account. Okay. And then from that account, once you put your name in and your data, it pulls up what you're qualified for. Now, some of the older veterans aren't computer savvy, but their families help them. Younger veterans, which a lot of them is what we're talking about now, if they can set up an eBenefits account, it pops up and tells you exactly, Don Keelan, your era, this is what benefits you have.
We can go on for quite a while. I still have a lot more questions, but I want to ask one last question, and that is, if you were the chief veteran officer in Vermont, what would you do that's not being done today?
Oh, that's a big question.
What would be your first priority? What would be the first thing you would tackle if you were in that office?
Well, being that I work at the Veterans Home, the first thing is I'd like a line item for that delta that we don't meet with our revenue. But I would try, if I was that person that you're talking about, I would try to coalesce the veterans community, because right now, again, veterans are quiet. They belong to organizations. I would try to coalesce that group into a body, a movement, so that they can get their voices heard.
Colonel, thanks a lot for being with me. And thanks for sharing your insights into how Vermont treats its veterans. And it appears that we are doing a fairly good job with the Vermont Veterans Home, the Vermont Clinic in Bennington, the Vermont Veterans and Outreach Center, and the hospital up in White River. But more can be done.
Always.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you all for tuning in today. I'm Don Keelan. And my guest today was Colonel Al Faxon, U.S. Marine Corps, retired.